Welcome back to the next episode of Second Chance Queen. Tonight we are going to be interviewing Whitley Nabintu Marshall, who is in the pageantry world one of my idols. So I'm super excited to be interviewing her tonight. Whitley Nabintu Marshall is a multifaceted force in the realms of art, fashion, dance, and activism. As the first openly pansexual international Mrs. USA of 2022 and Mrs. Florida USA Earth 2024, she embodies diversity and inclusivity in all facets of her work. As the CEO and editor-in-chief of Art Love Lifestyle magazine and the creative mind behind Art Love Lifestyle attire, Whitley is on a mission to redefine beauty standards and amplify underrepresented voices, both in print and on the runway. Through sustainable fashion events like Flowers That Feed Art and Fashion Showcase and True Beauty New York Fashion Week, she creates platforms that celebrate compassion, resilience, diversity, and authenticity while emphasizing inclusion. Despite facing multiple near-death experiences and periods of adversity, Whitley has transformed her pain into purpose, spearheading the Compassionate Leadership Project. Additionally, she is the founder and director of the Rhythm Rebels Dance Collective, captivating audiences worldwide with her performances. Through her mind-body compassion coaching, Whitley adopts a holistic approach to empower her clients, aiming to cultivate authentic and compassionate leaders within pageantry, the fashion industry, and beyond. Her impact extends beyond her professional endeavors, as she graces the covers of prestige magazines such as Success, Forbes, Los Angeles Business, and more. Recognized as a top women leader to watch and an official nominee for Beauty It's Everywhere Business of the Year 2023, Whitley's accolades include the Director's Leadership Award, the Inspirational Woman Award, Congeniality Award, and the Spirit Award presented by Pageantry magazine, among others. Whitley's dedication to fostering compassion, resilience, and inclusion serves as an inspiration to individuals worldwide, making her a true trailblazer in her field. I am super excited for Whitley to join us tonight and to hear all about her second chance story. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm super excited to interview you. You're probably one of my favorite people in the industry, so I'm really excited to have you on. So I would love to hear in your own words your second chance defining story.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I love what you're doing and your whole mission here. As far as my second chance, I've had a series of near-death experiences, but I would say the most defining moment is probably the car accident I was in when I was 18 years old, and they thought I was gonna die. Essentially, I was driving in a blizzard and got out of the tire tracks in the snow and spun into oncoming traffic and was hit on the passenger side, and then again spun again around, and they hit me again from the rear. Within a couple minutes, the car went up in flames too, but it just happened to be that someone recognized the car that I was driving as my mom's from church and pulled over, and he was a paramedic, and he was 2 cars behind me and pulled me out of the car. But that was a big game changer. I was 18. I was in school for studying art and psychology, and that shifted my whole direction of life. I was supposed to start a job 2 days after that car accident because my whole plan was to take a semester, pay off a semester, take a semester, pay off a semester, and so that changed my whole direction. I ended up living or being in the hospital for about a month in ICU, then going to a rehab facility and a nursing home, and living in a nursing home for a couple months, and then having physical and occupational therapy at home 9 months, essentially recovery for that. And so when I got well enough to work again, my sister was like, how about you come out to Maine and because when are you going to have more than a week to visit me? So how about I'll help you get a temp job for the month for the holidays, and then we can go back and visit mom for the holidays. So we went, and she essentially convinced me to move to Maine. I ended up, so from that car accident, I received multiple blood transfusions, and
Wow.
that ended up shifting my direction, or I guess sparking my interest in blood transfusion and transfusion medicine. And I ended up working for the American Red Cross for 16 years.
Wow.
Starting out doing blood drives all around the state of Maine, and then cross training in all different technologies for apheresis, which essentially is like, if you think of any type of blood component you could separate a whole blood product out into, that was essentially my specialty. And then, but we do the medical screening, the physical exams, the phlebotomy, any responding to any reactions to any of those things. And but essentially drawing blood used as transfusion medicine. And I was a biomedical charge toward the end of my career. I honestly think, the biggest like epiphany through that moment in general is through the biggest challenges that I've ever faced. At every single one of them, those have been the defining moments of my life, of stepping further into purpose and learning my passions, and really diving into that and just looking for the lessons around that, because I've found that everyone has a different response to every situation, and some of that's based off of personality, some of it's based off of trauma responses, some of it's based off of circumstance or mood in the moment. We have choice in how we respond. And so when I really clicked, I feel like that moment really was defining for me. It felt very like karmic, as well as purposeful. So even though I was like undergoing all this, I had a new drive to live as well, because I had a lot of life lived up until that moment already at 18. And so there's I just feel like that was a very defining moment for me. Every challenge, I feel like, has had lessons that have moved me in again, more toward my passions, clarifying vision. I feel like there's good things and challenges in every situation. And so a lot of it's how you decide to be through those.
I agree. And that's not the first time that I've heard of car accidents in particular being catalyst moments for people. I feel like the universe has a very strange way of catapulting people into the right direction. And sometimes I think traumatic experiences like a car accident or, something that normally you'd be like, oh, this is really negative. That's not the first time I've heard someone say that something really positive came out of a car accident. So I guess that's a great glass half full kind of way to look at things.
Another big thing I think that came from it, I'm just thinking through, is how it made me not fear death at all.
Wow.
From that point, because
That's an interesting perspective.
I've come so close to death so many times. I've really, in those moments, it's pretty cool what our bodies do actually to protect us from feeling the pain, but you can you experience it kind of from the outside. Like, I knew I was in pain, I knew I had things going on, but my body put myself in shock in that moment. And so it's more of an out of body experience. Like, even when I think of the car accident, it's more like time slowed down. So it just gave me different perspective on around death. I do think about death in an abnormal amount, I think, because of having so many experiences. I think a lot of the positives is it's not a fearful thing. I think I almost go in the opposite, like morbid direction of like, that wouldn't be that bad of a way to die.
I feel like when you have experiences like that, though, it does definitely change your perspective. Like, I've never been one that's feared death. I know a lot of people really do, but I've never been one that's feared death. I have an awkward fascination with it, like serial killer documentaries. Like, I've had moments in my life where I'm like, maybe I'm going to wind up on a documentary right now,
I
you
love
know?
about you.
But it's like, death is also such a big rebirth in a lot of ways. And I really wasn't afraid of death. And now I am more as a parent, definitely, because I'm not so much afraid of me dying, but I can't think of losing the ones that I love. But it's a very brave way to look at things. You know, most people would go and get that close to death and be like, oh no, I never want to. And you're just like, nah, you know, that might not be that bad. So I feel like that's a testament to how strong you are mentally because, and I think you definitely come off, and you can correct me with this, but you definitely come off as more of an optimist in a lot of ways than a pessimist. And I kind of sense that in you because I'm the same way. Like, the world can be falling around me and my husband. My husband's a pessimist all the way. Like, he will run around like a chicken with his head cut off. And I'm just like, but I'm still breathing. And he's just like, so I feel like you're that same type of person where like things could be going on around you and you're just kind of like, it could be worse.
It's true. I've experienced a lot of things from homelessness to food insecurity, to living in Africa and in a third world area and working in a clinic.
Wow.
So I've seen it. So I do a lot of the time most of the time have a glasses half full and a gratitude. I think a sense of gratitude for what I do have. Because I've
Yeah.
both experienced less myself and seen others in far more challenging circumstances
Yeah.
than I, to say the least. So
That I think it brings me to my next talking point, actually, because there's a word in your bio that I see multiple times, and it's one of my favorite words, and it's resilience. I feel like, embody resilience. If there was a human definition of resilience, I think your picture would be right next to it. Um, but that brings me to the question, do you think you have a specific catalyst for being resilient? Would it be the same second chance story that you just told, or is there something else that you think is really defined and kind of molded you into a resilient person?
I think experiencing multiple things over the years and having witnessed my mom also, my mom, I feel like, is one of the most resilient women that has ever been alive in many ways. So
Shout out to moms.
yeah, shout out to mom. But I feel like optimism and that resilience runs in a strong lineage of women in my family. And I do think that in a certain way, our neurospiciness aids us thriving in the chaos.
I would 100% agree with that because I know personally I'm one of those people where like I will stress about the tiniest thing, but you throw me into an emergency situation and I'm the calmest person in the room. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to X, Y, and Z, and then this is going to happen. And I just go into go mode. And then afterwards, I'll be crying over like a hangnail. And my husband's like, I just watched you like get out of this crazy situation and you're crying over a hangnail or because you didn't get chicken nuggets for dinner. Like, what is going on? So the neurospicy, I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, it's definitely a superpower and makes things more challenging at the same time. And that in itself probably aids resilience.
I would definitely agree with that. So one of the things that you've mentioned in your bio a little bit is, being a voice for underrepresented voices and inclusion and redefining beauty standards and all of those types of things. Where does that come from within you? Where would you say did something specific spark that? Is it your neurospiciness and wanting to, you know, make others feel good? Or is there anything specific that caused that kind of gravitational pull?
Several things. I personally have experienced living in a body that's everywhere from a size 2 to a size 18. Having experienced living in different bodies, you understand the different things that come with living in different bodies and different aspects
Yeah.
to that, and start shaping how you see beauty as well, or at least for me. It really, I had to come to a place of acceptance at all edges of the spectrum, and shift from looking a certain way or trying to look a certain way or achieve a certain aesthetic to accepting where I was at and feeling grateful for that and learning to treat myself better and focus more on nourishing my body, treating myself better, having more self-compassion, purposefully practicing coping strategies of various sorts, for stress management, and yeah, shifting that mindset for myself. Definitely that came before pageantry for me, and before any of my before my magazine was born, before even my personal art brand was born. So that perspective definitely impacts everything that I. So the magazine, Art, Love, Lifestyle, each seasonal issue has a theme focusing on the markers of what I call true beauty. I'm probably most passionate about expanding beauty standards and compassionate leadership. I could talk about both of them forever. And pageantry helped me really refine my vision, clarify and refine my vision for that, and set real goals towards seeing what I would like to see happen. So I started Art, Love, Lifestyle as my personal art brand initially, with the vision of maybe down the line I could have a magazine. And with that, those categories, I could fit pretty much everything that I liked into any of those categories. When COVID happened, that's another story of I guess, resilience through. I got long COVID. I wasn't approved to work longer than 4-hour shifts. So I was normally working 12-hour shifts. And that ended up being the starting point for me leaving the Red Cross, actually. And during that time that I had COVID, I enrolled in a personal training course, a nutritionist course, and launched Art, Love, Lifestyle magazine.
Feel like if my husband heard this conversation, he'd be like, "Oh, so no wonder why you gravitate to Whitley, because you're just like her." Because that was me like last week when I had COVID like a couple weeks ago, and I've still been dealing with the repercussions of it. And normal people would relax when they have COVID. And that is when I officially actually launched the first episodes of this podcast. Sitting there and doing nothing was not something I could do. I'm like, oh, we're going to launch the podcast right now. And he's like, you can't breathe. And I'm like, I don't need to breathe. Let's go. So that is ironic.
Like, you're crazy. And my doctor actually did lecture me. So for anyone out there, take care of yourself. You only have so much energy when you have COVID, and you might make yourself sicker. That's what my doctor was telling me. Yeah. So some of it might have been detrimental to my health.
But here we are. You have the magazine.
That completely shifted my direction. Right? If I didn't have such strong restrictions, and it forced my job also to find a way to replace me, because at the time I was one of 2 charges. So I never would have left, because I would have been left my essentially work mom hanging. But through all of that, back to your question, all of that led to that passion. Entering the realms of pageantry made me question my worthiness, and when I was first
Yep.
recruited, it was literally the last thing that I ever would have expected. I found it hilarious, actually, because at the time I had really long dreadlocks also, so it
Oh.
wasn't really the pageant aesthetic that I imagined. Uh,
Yeah.
and
You don't see dreads too much in the pageant world.
nope. Um, so, but I had a lot of questioning around my own body, my curves, my stretch marks, my excess skin, like things that were really the really taught me about what I really saw the veil of beauty standards. It taught me a lot about also my experience, and I think that this should probably be talked about more within, but it's hard because it involves our families, but how our mothers pass their own body insecurities down onto their children just by talking about their own bodies in certain ways. But I had to peel back all those different layers. And then really what it came down to is like, as I was like picking apart all of the reasons I did not belong in pageantry, I was like, and actually maybe all of those things are exactly why I should go into pageantry. And so that was
Yes.
the defining moment for me when I went all in. Was like, oh, actually, I think people need to see people like me who have nerve dimension half of their mouth competing,
Oh.
well, it's like, those are all the things that, going into it, I think that a lot of us nitpick
Yeah.
ourselves. We question our worth, see the beauty industry in a very specific way. We have our own
Yeah.
stereotypes that we've bought into around it. And so a lot of what I've loved actually is how pageantry has also proven me like wrong, not wrong, but it's made me realize that no one really fits into the stereotype in pageantry. Like there are people that strive toward that stereotype sometimes, I think, with a misperception of
Yeah.
not being able to win authentically. But that's been a big part of my mission, is both competing as an authentic person myself, as well as raising other authentic women leaders in pageantry through coaching. Because I've seen the power of authenticity. People love vulnerability. They love authenticity. You can feel the genuineness. It's important for people to represent authentically, because really pageantry comes down to stage performance more than any kind of body in reality. You're going to have your traditional people, but like I'm here for it. I'm like, if I have a panel of like ultra traditional beauty industry and I get to talk about expanding beauty standards, that's like kind of amazing to me.
That's perfect.
Exactly.
I know I've kind of mentioned it before, but you really were a steamroller and have made a huge impact already in the pageantry community by being a visible title holder. And I know I've kind of mentioned to you before, but I last year was at the International Miss pageant, which shout out to International Miss because it's an amazing system. But I was at that pageant watching in 2023, and obviously you were a title holder for 2022. So I didn't get to see you compete and crowned, but I did get to see you come back to crown your successor. And I remember I was sitting in the audience, and I remember this like it was yesterday. It's why I feel so drawn to this system. And I'm like, I don't care if it takes 10 years, I'm putting their crown on my head. But I remember sitting in the audience and I saw you on the stage and I saw you on the giant posters that they have out in the front that you can take pictures on. And
It's
I remember
crazy how big
thinking,
they made our faces.
I know, you're huge. I'm like, I'm going to be there one day. But I remember seeing you and going, okay, there's so many things about her that are authentic and they're unique and they're beautiful. You had shorter hair, which is not something you typically see a lot of in pageantry. You see the long flowing curls, and I had shorter hair at the time. I still kind of do in pageantry standards, but you had a curvier body, and I have a curvier body. So I remember seeing she's got a real body. She's got curves to her. Not that skinny people aren't real, but you can see that it's not a bought body. It's a real body. And you had tattoos, which was one of my favorite things because I had it in my mind when I entered pageantry. That was one of the things that I said to myself, like, oh, you'll never win because you have a bunch of tattoos. And then I go to that pageant and I see you up there and you have all your tattoos. And I was like, if they will crown Whitley, I might have a shot in this system. And I loved seeing that because it gave a huge sense of authenticity to International Miss, because it was like, okay, they're not looking for just the women who fit traditional beauty standards. They're crowning winners based off what's in their mind, what's in their hearts, and they're willing to look beyond what maybe the traditional standards were. And that was huge. So you really were a pioneer for at least one woman, because I don't think I would have dove back into the pageant industry after my first pageant experience if I hadn't had seen you. And then ironically, you volunteered at my pageant and I got to speak with you more. And you are very real. I can say you're a very genuine person, you're very authentic, and you come off that way, which is something that, like, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but people have said that I'm very similar. And I think it's the neurospicy thing. I really do. Because us neurospicy people, we're just like, hey, friend, and we'll start talking to people and sharing our stories. But that was like one of the huge things, was I got to spend time with you and see, okay, like, she's a real person and she's out there doing all these crazy things, So I do want to say thank you on a personal level, because I would not be where I am today checking off my goals if it wasn't for you and what you've pioneered. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so awesome. Thank you. I'm so honored and like, I like.
No, but it's true and it's real, and it's amazing because I can relate. Something that you just said especially too was you've been size 2 to size 18. And that was a huge thing for me too, because in high school I was a size 2 and I was really small, and I kind of was busting into the modeling industry and modeling world as a tiny little itty bitty thing. And then life happens, right? And I had 3 kids, and my body is not what it was pre 3 children. And now I'm a size, 14, 16. And I've had the same process that I think you've had, where you're so many sizes and you experience life in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You recognize the differences in not only how you feel about yourself and what you see internally, but also how you're treated. I mean, a lot of people don't like talking about it, but there is differences in how you're treated depending on how you look. So I think it's so important that you're out here pushing in the pageantry world and beyond for different beauty standards, because the average size of American women is up in the 14, 16 range. It's no longer like it was, back in probably the 50s, where everybody was a size 2, 4. It's just not like that anymore. So seeing more women that have post-baby bodies and that are out there with stretch marks and scars and all of that is really important, I think, for the pageantry world and the world in general, especially because we have systems like Miss USA that are now lifting age restrictions. They're lifting marital status restrictions, and they're saying, come one, come all, come compete. So I think it's important for pioneers like yourself to be out there that are still pushing that envelope. Visibility is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad that that's happened. I know that there's questionable intentions behind the scenes, but
Yes.
I kind of see it as a win-win either way, because I feel like we're seriously limiting our vision of beauty through trying to keep a very specific aesthetic of beauty. If you go across cultures, Like you can really see how beauty is defined in different ways across different cultures. And those beauty standards are impactful in every single culture, no matter what that beauty standard is. The beauty standard
Yeah.
itself is limiting of beauty. And so we could all use, I feel like, more influence from one another, even understanding even just different cultural views around beauty. My favorite question to ask everybody is, what true beauty is to them, because I ask that like for the magazine all the time because I love doing part of how I like to elevate underrepresented voices is through featuring people both in print and then on the runway and giving voice to models of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, abilities. So, but seeing everybody's different view of beauty, it really is defined so differently from person to person. And it's beautiful to look through people's eyes and lens of beauty. And it helps expand your own because you're seeing it through different people's eyes. Nobody's view of beauty is wrong.
Yeah.
Like we like to see beautiful things naturally as humans. Like our
Yeah.
eyes will even self-correct to try to make things more beautiful than they are. Um, Something we learn about in art class because your eyes will start doing things like creating symmetry where there's not symmetry and
Oh, wow.
creating shapes to emphasize certain angles and things like that. So
That's
they teach you
cool.
tricks of how to learn how to do the opposite. But I think it's inherent in our humanity to want to see beautiful things. But I think we're
Yeah.
limiting our views of beauty, and like there's so much beauty beyond the standards that I would love to see emphasized. Like I'm not against seeing beauty through different standards, I guess. I think that, but I think my intention would be to have it expand as an expansive practice in order to further create a standard. It's more to just, expand the standards.
I love that. And something that I feel like can aid that too, or something to point out, I guess, is for women that are competing that aren't necessarily the beauty standard, is that pageantry is so subjective. I mean, it really is such a subjective, and I know this from judging. I know you've recently been judging. And when you're sitting in that judge's table, I feel like it really helps you in a lot of ways as a competitor because you're put in the hot seat
Yeah.
and you're going, okay, what am I looking for as a judge? And so you start to, critique the girls that you're judging, and then you walk away and you go, okay, well, I was looking for these things, but what I may be looking for is different than what you're looking for. So it's something that I think everybody needs to be reminded, and I wish they would say
And
that
I
almost
love
at
to
every
wait
pageant.
purposefully to have a different focus too. To a lot, yeah, like a lot of panels are put together as like someone who will be like hyper focusing on model, one person who's hyper focusing on modeling, someone
Yeah.
who works for a news station that's going to be thinking all about that interview and those concise
Yeah.
responses. Yeah, you're going to have your former queens who have done the job and they're like, tell me what you think this job is seeking,
Yeah. Can you do it? Can you hold up to the pressure?
Exactly. Um, but that's where the beauty of judging is that also you
Yeah.
see like, oh, I see how they put this together. And then
Yeah.
you can also you learn from the different judges themselves just by how they are as people. Then you also learn from just seeing people back to back to back. And yeah, a lot is
Patterns
subjective, but
emerge.
there are definitely things that you start seeing, you're like, oh, okay. Because you start figuring out too, like, this is my 10, this is my 9, this is my 8. Judging is
Yeah.
such a weird thing. And yeah, it's like sometimes even where you fall in line, it can work. And I feel like hopefully it would work more in your advantage than not. But if the judges don't know what they're
looking for, I guess, what their standard is. If they're just kind of willy-nilly throwing numbers out there, which I have seen also as a judge, one person will be like, oh, I liked her dress more than the other, scribble, and then put a number, and you're just like,
yeah. But I think it's just, exactly. It just teaches, I feel like it's all a social experience. Like, that's how we kind of treat so much of life, is like, it's just, because you're going to have different perspectives. You're going to have judges that are, some that are more emotional, some that are more like logical and tangible minded. That you're, so a lot of it really is subjective, and as a strategy, I just try to be real and fit in all of those things if possible. Like, here's some tangible
I think that's
things,
the
and here's
best.
some emotional things.
I feel like that's smart though, because one of the things that I've noticed, at least for me as an individual, is if I'm authentic and I'm myself, I'm way more confident and comfortable. And that's a huge thing, is when I go into something, if I'm trying to fit a mold, or I'm trying to fit a rubric, or I'm trying to fit what I think they want, you're going to see right through me, because can I be polished? Absolutely. Can I be eloquent? Absolutely. But I'm always going to be real, and I'm always going to be kind of goofy. So I come in with authenticity, because the way I look at it, you're either going to crown me because you like me, or crown me, or don't crown me if you don't like me. But I'm not going to come in as something else, because my reign, you're not going to get that version of me that, presented differently. I look at it like, if I'm reigning for a year, what you see is what you get. So I feel like the authentic message that you give is really important for women to hear, because if you can't keep it up 24/7 for 365, don't do it.
Yeah, well, and if you're not being authentic too, if you're trying to present as something different than you are, then you're going to be attracting people toward this image of you, not toward like your people. Too.
That makes sense. What would you say your definition of confidence is? If you could speak to girls and women right now and give your version of confidence and how you define it, what would you say it is?
I'd say confidence is stepping into your goals and practice, or confidence comes through experience and practice. So, whether you feel that right now or not, it can come through just practice and experience, and just trust. So sometimes it's just a trust that it's coming. Like, I know for me, confidence really stems from within, and it's a mindset over matter thing more than anything. But
Agreed.
I do think that it has served me in the past to, if I don't feel confident, to try to imagine or almost embody someone else that is like Beyonce.
I love that you said this though, because a huge part of I've recently launched a confidence workshop, and I define my confidence building workshop by the word self, which is an acronym for 4 different things. And you just hit 2 of those things on the head. So self-care is number 1, because if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be confident. The second one is exercising your skills. So practice, which was a key thing of what you just said. Practice, practice, practice. Listen to positivity is L. And then F is fake it till you make it. And I feel like that is a huge part of what you just said.
To say that exact phrase.
Yep.
Too cliche to say.
That's like,
it really is. It's like, if you don't have confidence, just embody confidence from something else. Because like, if I sometimes before stepping on stage, all the voices come in your head that shouldn't be there. So you might not feel the most confident right in that moment sometimes, but if you are like, I am Beyonce, You go out and you're like, I am Beyonce. So it can, and then you feel more confident after because you were able to achieve to then get those wins too through it.
Yeah. You walk
So
off stage with like such a high too. You're like, I just did that. So even if you didn't walk on feeling like Beyonce, a lot of times I feel like you walk off and you're like, I just did that.
exactly. But
So
I
that
love
is,
your 4 pillars of
thank you.
confidence.
Thank you. Yeah, I made the whole, concept for the workshop. I've been debuting it in my community already, and I'm love doing these interviews because I'm seeing such a common thread in almost every woman that comes on this podcast. When I ask them that question, I get one of the 4. And I'm just like, I have this internal moment of, yes, you're onto something because it just kind of lines up. So I love that you said that because that is one of the things actually that I haven't heard anybody say is that kind of fake it till you make it mentality. And it sounds kind of funny when you're saying like, oh, I'm trying to teach you how to be confident, just fake it. It's as people that are very much like be authentic, it's kind of opposite of that almost for a second. But I feel like I know I'm going to walk on stage with Taylor Swift's I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, like playing in my head. Like that's going to be probably my stage mental song because baby gotta fake it till you make it. And it's so accurate.
Well, and as far as stage confidence, like I think having like just like you said, like the repetition aspect, but like having a stage song, I know that helps me too because then also you get that song in your head no matter what plays.
Yeah. I think officially Taylor Swift is going to be my mental stage song for this year. I don't know what it'll be next year, but I'll be playing that on repeat in my
Taylor
head.
Swift
So
song did you say again?
I Can Do It With a Broken Heart.
Yes.
That is going to be the song that like is just playing cuz I'm going to be like we're going to go out there, and a huge part pageantry that I've noticed with myself, the biggest thing I struggle with is imposter syndrome, which is terrible. I hate imposter syndrome, but it's such a real thing. Absolutely. I struggled a lot with last year being my first pageant and seeing all of these women and going, how the heck did I get a seat at this table? Like, how did I pull this off? I don't know how I pulled this off. And I had to kind of fake my way through it. And I remember at that pageant, I got top 20, which was awesome for my first pageant. But the biggest thing that I walked away with was the Iconic Impact Award and the recognition for what I did back at home. And I remember thinking, like, this is better than winning for me because it was so validating internally of all the work that I did leading up to the pageant. And I went, okay, I earned that seat. That was an award that I earned that seat. And now for International Miss, I'm still carrying on that legacy, but I'm still struggling with that imposter syndrome. I mean, I'm looking and I have to stay off social media sometimes because I'm like, oh my God, this woman is a doctor that speaks 6 languages and she's beautiful and holy cow. And oh my gosh, this woman is traveling the world and she has a successful brand. And this woman is running this company that all of these other pageant queens are involved with. And it's like, holy crap, you start to like think, and then I have to kind of fake it in my head, and I'm just like, I come and I sit in this chair and I'm like, you know what, they don't have a throne. Exactly. That's what I have to tell myself.
Well, everyone is so different, and like the thing about International Miss is really everyone is so accomplished, so like going into it, so much is just like enjoying and being like, wow, I'm with like some of the most powerhouse women in all of the world.
It is so empowering being among those women because you get in that mindset sometimes where you're like imposter syndrome kicks in and you're like, how the heck am I going to pull this off? But then you start to think, I'm with these women. Like I'm in the same room as these women, and you kind of have to flip how you're thinking And then all of a sudden you find yourself going, okay, like I'm going to learn something from each one of these women.
Exactly.
And something that a friend of mine said at my last pageant when I was battling with the imposter syndrome, because being in pageantry, it's hard to beat at first. I feel like that is one of those things where you're not expecting it and then it lurches at you. And she said something along the lines of, a rose and a sunflower are both beautiful flowers. They're just different in their own ways. And I loved that. That stuck with me because when I start to fall into that trap, I'm just like, she's a rose and I'm a sunflower. Namaste.
Exactly.
What type of tips would you give for someone like myself or someone else that is struggling? Is it really boil down to that fake it till you make it and just, taking away what you can from it?
Well, I think along the lines, not necessarily fake it till you make it, but drawing inspiration and like looking for inspiration, I think is very key. Looking for the lessons that you're supposed to learn through every situation. Like we talked about it on like a deeper level with like near-death experiences, but also from, smaller things and even small refinements in performance, in interview, any kind of, really any kind of, whether it's work, whether in family, wherever you put your energy and your focus, that is going to grow. And like, I know that's a saying as well, but it's really true. Like you're drawing attention to that matter. If you're focusing on your health, you're going to be more aware of ways that you are either hurting or benefiting your health. So that
Yeah.
awareness is really key. I think getting real with yourself and being humble is a good, genuine trait. And I think a lot of imposter syndrome sometimes is born out of almost a little too much humility, but it's also a self-questioning of worth and of impact. And so something that I find with anything, like you know me and my compassionate leadership
Yes.
thing, but a lot of what the whole theory around that goes from shifting from focusing on the problem to focusing on solutions. If you shift
I
your
love that.
empathy and turn that into action, that starts to alleviate any of those feelings because you're starting to take action toward those goals. If you are feeling, and it also shifts the energy of empathy or like compassion fatigue. If you shift it toward the alleviating part, then it starts shifting from a stressful thing to a positive dopamine fulfilling activity instead.
And we need those.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I also think you can be strategic around your own mental health, your own confidence. I think making plans, I think when you're in a good state, is one of the better things for any type of plan. Like I just wrote an article or a blog for both my magazine, but also for Still She Rose around research-based strategies of overcoming suicidal ideation. I know that's a deep
Oh,
topic,
I
but
love that though.
a big part of that is setting a suicide prevention plan while you're in a good state, because you know yourself the best too. So like your triggers also around what's causing imposter syndrome, even like there's what's making you feel either not worthy or not enough, or that something might not be the fuller vision of what your big vision is. And so I feel like a lot of that is you want to be at your bigger vision when really you're like at these like baby steps up to that big vision. And because you're not here and you're like at a baby step, even though everybody's like, oh my gosh, like, because to them, like your baby steps like up here. So they're like, well, she's done, and you're like, I'm just at this baby step down here. But
I feel like that's a great perspective, though, because a lot of times, a lot of us do downplay our achievements. That I feel like that's such a broad spectrum. You have the people that downplay their achievements and they practice humility to a fault, and then you have the people that are on the other end of the spectrum that you don't want to be at either, because nobody really wants to be around one of those people. So I feel like finding that balance, that is an amazing point that people need to hear, is your baby step might be a huge step to somebody else, and that's a really positive way to look at it.
A lot of the time where you're at is also an answer to a former dream that you had as well, so that I know helps me find gratitude in my personal situations, even amongst challenges, but
that's great.
There's a couple mantras that I feel like help with us, or reminders and mantras. But through the challenges, I try to just remind myself that that's what's going to give me the lessons that I need to get to where I want to be. And
I love that.
Where I'm at, it was at one point what I dreamed of. So
I feel like that is such a huge insight. And I love that, because it can bring you back down to earth and kind of open your eyes. Even just having this podcast is something that, somebody else might hear, oh, she's got a podcast, that's really cool. And in my mind, I'm just like, oh, I just have this small little podcast. I downplay it. And then someone else might be going, I had someone the other day that said, oh, I've really been wanting to do a podcast. Maybe I'll get with you and you can show me how you did it. And I'm thinking, oh, you want to learn from me? That's amazing. So I feel like I needed that perspective. Definitely. You helped me with that, because just a couple weeks ago, I was terrified of launching this podcast. I'm like, how do I hook my computer to my camera, to my microphone system and the lights, and how do I do this? And now I've got people asking me, like, how do I launch podcasts? And I'm like, come to my TED Talk. Got you. So that's an amazing insight.
You
and
have to make a tutorial, because now I want to learn.
Yeah. I got you. I feel like I'm learning the ropes for everybody, and I can tell you what to do and not to do. I can tell you that the first time that you go on Amazon and you search your name in something, I'm sure authors have this all the time, where they find their book on Amazon and they're like, oh my God. But for me, it was going on Amazon and searching and finding my podcast on Amazon. I'm on Amazon, so I could definitely type something out to help everybody. So I'm going to switch gears, because both of us are in an amazing organization, or ambassadors for an amazing organization, the Still She Rose initiative. And coincidentally, we are both the month of October. We're going to be the ambassadors for October together. October is a great month. I know you have so many things going for you. You've got the magazine, you've got True Beauty, you've got all of these things that are going on and that you work with and you advocate for. What can we expect to see out of you for your year as the Still She Rose ambassador? Is there anything you've already got cooking in that brain of yours? This is what I want to tackle?
You'll definitely see a lot more blogs from me. It's something, I write a lot of articles for the magazine, and especially I'm like, all of it really kind of, every issue I have something that applies. So I'll be taking some of the things that I wrote about from different things and tailoring it to Still She Rose.
Cool.
So I'll be doing, kind of a blog series. I do have some things cooking that I cannot talk about quite yet, but yes, there will be things coming down the line. I
may be saying, hey, Whitley, you need to come back on here and we need to talk about this thing you just launched.
Yeah, I'm very excited about an upcoming project with Still She Rose. And I will also, though, be releasing Compassionate Leadership Handbook and Guided Journal.
That's awesome.
So that's some exciting things. I've had those, I have in my ADHD brain, like multiple books in the works at simultaneously, depending on
Same, girl.
what I'm
Same.
inspired by in that moment.
Same. I have 2 manuscripts that I'm writing at the same time right now, so I relate.
Yeah, but I'm gonna be like honing in on like actually completing a couple of those at least and getting
Ooh.
those out. I'm also going to be part of, I'm a co-author in a book called Bringing Resilient Queens. And so that will be
That's
coming out
amazing.
in um, the fall. So
I love
that's
that.
and then
I will be definitely reading that.
yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, it's different women from all different backgrounds sharing their stories of resilience. So everybody has a powerful story and they're all so different. So it's a really neat project to be able to be a part of. We just went
I love that.
to Colorado. We did our Queens shoot there. And
I love that state.
there's Queens. Yeah, I love Colorado too. It was the shortest trip though. I wish that I could have gone longer, but I think that those are like the biggest things upcoming other than New York Fashion. But yeah.
we might have to trade the podcast lessons for the how do I publish my book lessons, because I have my first book literally written on my laptop and I'm like, okay, I have this idea and I've got it written and I just need to get it illustrated and published because it's a children's book, and I'm like at that point where I'm like, how do I do this? So we'll trade lessons.
Yes, definitely. I can help you with that.
Queens supporting queens. That is like one of my favorite things about pageantry in general, is you meet so many women. I know Still She Rose, one of the amazing queens that is another ambassador on there, posted, she was talking about her book in one of the workshops that we had, and I went on Amazon right away and I bought the last copy and I was like, girl, I got your last copy. And I had a queen reach out to me today that I've been friends with since high school, and she's like, I just bought tickets to go to your pageant in September. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the sisterhood with pageantry has been so much fun. It's a lot of people, I think, feel like it might be like this mean girl type of thing behind the scenes, because pageantry can get a bad rep, but I've had so many more positive experiences of women uplifting each other and being like, hey, your crown's crooked, I'm gonna fix it, or hey, you did this thing, let me go support you. And that's been so amazing to see happen.
It's really true. That's what blew me away too, because I definitely came in with more of the TV stereotype, I will say, around pageantry. And yeah, I was just blown away at how real everyone is and uplifting and all the good all the good things, and just different types of people.
Yeah. It's so diverse.
Exactly.
Yeah. What am I doing for Still She Rose? So October is the Domestic Abuse Awareness. So I'm definitely going to be focusing. I haven't decided specifically what I'm doing yet, but I know it's going to be domestic abuse awareness related, because obviously that's my main platform. And something that I'm passionate about is domestic abuse. So ironically, that is why I was Mrs. Colorado. So you met me as I was Mrs. Colorado, and it's funny because I'm, a born and raised Floridian. I've lived in Florida my whole 31 years. But I briefly moved to Colorado in 2016 when I was in the middle of my abusive relationship. And after a couple months, we wound up having to move back to Florida. But so when Florida wasn't available the year that I competed, because of Tanya being Miss Florida, love Tanya. I'm like, yeah, I know. We love you, Tanya. I was like, oh, well, what state could I represent? And my husband's home state was being represented by someone, and I was like, Colorado. And ironically, that's what I reigned as, was Mrs. Colorado. So when you say you were just out at Colorado, though, it's beautiful and I love it. But yeah, domestic abuse is the root of why I do all of my things now. So I'm going to be focusing on October being domestic abuse awareness. and domestic violence.
Yeah. I definitely expected that out of you.
Yeah, it's not a shocker there. So yesterday I found out I was accepted as a member for the Florida Partnership to End Domestic Violence. So that is going to come in handy in October.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So yeah, we'll have to coordinate somehow. We'll have to talk behind the scenes. And
yeah, we definitely will. That's the fun part of having a partner for the month.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to shout out, or any last statement that you want to leave as kind of your legacy statement, or anything that you want to share?
You know, with all things that we do, I think I really do believe that if we put things through the lens of compassion, both from compassion towards ourselves first. I think that that's the most important. In order to feed others, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can put it on other people, and then practice compassion towards the people around us, our pets, animals, toward the environment. I think that compassion truly can lead and successfully guide us to both confidence through understanding perspectives and practicing self-compassion, getting to know yourself, self-discovery, all the things that are involved in seeing things through a lens of compassion. I think that I personally believe that would literally solve every problem in the world. So if anyone else would like to join me on that journey, you can project called the Compassionate Leadership Project, that we also collaborate a lot with Still She Rose. But feel free, it's just a free Facebook group you can join, and you can follow it on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, sorry guys. I also love to feature other people who practice compassionate leadership, but essentially trying to grow a global network of compassionate leaders. Like, I do have some realms of compassionate leadership that we teach as well. So anyone who'd like to follow with that, there is. Otherwise, I guess just you can find me at Whitley Nabintu Marshall or Mind Body Compassion Coach.
Thank you so much for coming on this evening and for talking to us. I love all of the messages that you've shared, and I think, like myself being inspired by you, there will be plenty of other women that listen to this and can definitely relate. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to honor you and everything that you're doing. It's amazing to see this born, and love hearing all the different stories of resilience and you sharing your own story. But it's powerful because through sharing vulnerability, lives change and people fall in love with that and learn about themselves. So just hope that you know that what you have started is bigger than you realize.
Oh, thank you. Don't make me cry. Thank you.
Welcome. So happy to see you.